Welcome to The Bitter Witness.
Don't be scared.
Hello. Welcome back. I hope you've had a good week. I had a great week. As I said at the beginning of last week's episode, I went to Ireland for a week with my bestie. I highly, highly recommend it. We had so much fun. A week of laughter, a week of adventures, and some heart-to-hearts. It was fabulous. I will regale you with one story from Ireland. It's about a magpie. Now, I don't think I've ever seen a magpie before in my life. And we were standing in the Airbnb kitchen talking with the host, getting to know him. He was a wonderful person. And all of a sudden, I saw the biggest, most beautiful bird, black and white, and to me, it looked like a pigeon, fly from somewhere to one of the trees. And I went, oh my God, I just saw a black and white pigeon. I've never seen a black and white pigeon before. John, our host, and Vanessa burst into hysterical laughters. And she looks at me and says, you fucking idiot, that's a magpie. And I was like, well, I've never seen a magpie. From then on, for the next 2 days, they were relentless on the black and white pigeon. They thought that was the funniest thing that ever crossed their earballs. So by the end of the second day, when we got back from our adventures, John came into the kitchen and said, "Did you see any black and white pigeons today?" And I informed them that a magpie is no longer called a black and white pigeon or a magpie. It's now a fuck you, John, fuck you, Vanessa bird. And from here on out, that's what every magpie shall be called in my life. Anyway. Oh, update on the squirrel. Marv has moved into the back room of my home. He and I believe it's his girlfriend, who I'm going to call Marge, are now enjoying themselves frolicking around in the back room of my home. Every time I go to the kitchen sink and look out the window into the back room, Marv or Marge pops up just to say hello and a big fuck you, we're living here now. They're squatters. I believe that Marv and Marge and I are going to have a heart-to-heart because we can't all live in the same home. However, I still don't want to get close to them because squirrels are fucking crazy and they'll kill you. If you like the show, please head over to our Patreon page and support us. You can also sign up on Spotify and you get exclusive access to the Bitter Bits. They're just shorter episodes of things I find interesting. It's how we keep the lights on, and it allows me to continue doing what I love doing. With the business out of the way, let's get into this case this week. The dogs are sleeping behind me, so Puppy ASMR will be brought to you by both Miley and Piper. So grab a cup of tea, sit back, relax, while I tell you about the murders of Mike Wallace and David Castor and the attempted murder of Ashley Wallace. Trigger warning for today's episode. This episode includes murder, attempted murder, suicide, and filicide. As always, I want to give the victims in our case top billing. Mike, David, Ashley. I acknowledge you, and I send my love to you wherever you may be. Stacey Castor was born Stacey Daniels in Clay, New York on July 24th, 1967. Her parents were Jerry Daniels and Judy Eaton. In 1985, when Castor was only 17, she met a 24-year-old man, Mike Wallace. Not that Mike Wallace, another one. Castor fell hard and fast for Mike. She was convinced he was her true love. Castor and Mike married, and shortly after the wedding, in 1988, their first daughter, Ashley, was born. 3 years later, the couple welcomed their second daughter, Bree. The young couple struggled to make ends meet. Mike worked nights as a mechanic, and Stacey Castor worked for an ambulance dispatch company. I'm not too sure what her role was there, but they seemed to be working at it and just getting by. According to Castor, Bree and Mike had a very solid and close relationship as father and daughter. Castor later stated that she made up for the apparent favoritism for Bree to Ashley by becoming best friends with Ashley. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a great big fat red flag right there. Over the next few years, the couple started drifting apart and the family started to show signs of fracturing. In 1999, Mike started to show signs that something was wrong with his health. He was unsteady on his feet, coughing, he was swelling all over his body, and he just really felt like ass. His family members, that is, his siblings and parents, were trying to urge Mike to get to a doctor and see what was happening with him. They were worried because this all sort of came out of the blue, and he was only 39 years old. But Mike, sadly, was never able to make it to a doctor. In January of 2000, Ashley was spending some time with her dad, and before her eyes, Mike fell to the ground and passed away. Ashley stated that she blamed herself for a long time for her father's death. Ashley was only 11 at this time, just a little baby. Ashley, I hope if you ever listen to this, you know it was not your fault. The doctors didn't order an autopsy on Mike's body. They told Stacey Castor that Mike had passed away from a heart attack. When Castor told Mike's sister how her brother had died, Mike's sister was extremely skeptical and asked Castor to ask for an autopsy to be conducted. Castor refused to an autopsy. She informed Mike's family that people should not second-guess a doctor, and with that, she had Mike buried in a cemetery in Onondaga County in New York. Mike's family was very upset about there being no autopsy, but according to the law at the time, it was up to the next of kin to decide if an autopsy was to be done. From then, Castor began her life as a single mom of 2 girls. The trio seemed to be doing great. The girls were very close to their mom, and Castor was working and taking care of her little family. After a few years, Stacey Castor met David Castor. David worked in the heating and air conditioning business, and business was going very well for him. According to David's son, David Jr., his father was a very particular and meticulous kind of guy. Everything had to be perfect. And for David Sr., his hyper attention to detail paid off for him with success in his field. In July of 2005, David Sr.'s father passed away, and it hit him really hard. He was having a hard time dealing with losing his dad. I can relate. Castor told their friends that David Sr. began drinking heavily as a result of the depression of losing his father. She also told people that his behavior had become irregular and unpredictable. On August 21st, 2005, Castor called 911 and reported that her husband had locked himself in their bedroom for the last day. She informed the dispatcher that the couple had gotten into an argument on the Friday night, which was the 19th. She stated that he had become aggressive towards her, but wasn't violent. When you listen to the conversation between Castor and the 911 operator, Castor almost sounds nonchalant about the whole situation, but the dispatcher seems to think she's crying. A sheriff's deputy arrived at the house and tried banging on the bedroom door to get David to open it. When that failed to get any answer from David, the deputy asked Castor for permission to kick in the door. Castor agreed. Why didn't she kick in the fucking door before that? Honestly, if my spouse or partner locked themselves in a room for 3 days, you can bet your ass I would be kicking that door down. Like, that wouldn't be happening. And Castor was not a tiny woman. She could have elbowed that fucking door open. I'm telling you. We'll find out why she didn't do that later. Moving on. When the door flew open, the deputy was greeted by an awful, horrific scene. David Sr. was lying diagonally across the bed naked. There was vomit and bodily fluids all over the bed and all over the room. Next to the bed, there were 2 glasses on the nightstand. One glass had a small amount of what I would say looked like whiskey from my observations from the crime scene photos. The other one was about half full with a neon green liquid. There was also an alcohol bottle and an empty jug of cranberry juice beside the glasses. Under the bed, police found a shotgun, and half under the bed and just sticking out about halfway was a bottle of antifreeze. Now, the position of the bottle is on the side of the bed, the same side as the nightstand, and David's feet were hanging off the bed on that side of the bed. And the antifreeze bottle was directly under his feet. The contents of the glasses was collected and sent to the lab for testing. There, the testing revealed that the neon green liquid was ethylene glycol, which is the main component in antifreeze. An autopsy was conducted on David, and it was confirmed that David had ingested a lethal dose of antifreeze. With that, the cause of death was determined to be suicide. The police wondered why David would kill himself by drinking antifreeze when he had a shotgun under the bed. According to Stacey Castor, David had locked himself in the bedroom since Friday, and he was found on the Monday. So in essence, she was presenting a scenario where David Castor wanted to kill himself over a 72-hour period by antifreeze, which would include violent vomiting and all kinds of other biological substances coming out of his body. Instead of using the shotgun and having it all over in a fraction of a second, something smells fishy. In the kitchen, the police found a turkey baster in the garbage, and the turkey baster had traces of the neon green liquid inside it. Testing confirmed that that liquid was antifreeze, and there was DNA on the tip of the turkey baster. Testing showed that the DNA only belonged to David. So he used the turkey baster to do what? He started to drink the antifreeze from the turkey baster in the kitchen and then decided instead to move to the bedroom and drink the antifreeze from a glass? It doesn't make any sense, and it didn't make any sense to the police. And this is when the law enforcement and prosecutors began to formulate an idea that this might not be suicide. Lead detective Dominic Spinelli stated in an interview that his gut was telling him that there was more going on than just a suicide. So he started looking into things. One of the first things he found was that when Stacey Castor had called 911, she had stated that David had gotten really drunk Friday night. But the toxicology report from the autopsy showed there was no trace of alcohol in David's system at all. Now, you might be thinking that the alcohol would be gone after 8 hours, but that's not always the case. Depending on the amount that you consume, it can last for a while. I actually have a friend from high school who got charged with drinking and driving the day after a party. He had spent the night at the party, slept, and then drove home the next day, late morning, early afternoon, and he still blew a warning. So alcohol doesn't leave your system after 8 hours, kids. There will still be traces there. Then the police received the reports regarding the 2 glasses that were found on the nightstand beside the bed. On the rims of both glasses, scientists found David's DNA. David's fingerprints were found on the glass that held the small amount of whiskey. But only Stacey Castor's fingerprints were on the glass that had antifreeze in it. When looking at the crime scene photos, something interesting stood out. Remember I told you that there were bodily fluids all over the room and that the large jug of antifreeze was found half under the bed, right under David's feet? When you look closer at the crime scene photos, you can clearly see bodily fluids dripping down the bed and onto the floor, and this is positioned right under where David's feet are. But there are no bodily fluids on the antifreeze jug. But there is clearly bodily fluids under the jug of antifreeze on the rug. In one of the crime scene photos, you can clearly see that there is a bed skirt on the bed, and that bed skirt is literally touching the top of the jug. And right where the skirt is touching the jug, there is a streak of vomit that comes all the way down to the very bottom of the skirt, but nothing landed on the jug. So obviously that jug was placed there after David had vomited. The vomit just stops at the edge of the bed skirt, and there's nothing below, like just the jug is below it, a clean jug. If David Castor had poured the antifreeze himself and dropped the jug on the floor and then started vomiting, there would be a clear void of bodily fluids under the jug. But that's not what is in the crime scene photos. When Detective Spinelli was interviewing Stacey Castor, he asked her if she knew what the substance in antifreeze was that could kill a person, and Castor answered ethyl glycol. Spinelli found it strange that she would know that. Now, remember, this is kind of before true crime became popular with the general public. I think it was just starting, but it was really not mainstream like it is today. So that kind of knowledge wouldn't be something that was commonly known. Now, I'm sure everyone knows that ethylene glycol is the ingredient in antifreeze that will kill people. Spinelli also noted that throughout the interview with Stacey Castor, she would consistently mispronounce the word antifreeze. Castor would say antifree instead. Castor also told Spinelli in the interview that she knew that antifreeze could be used to commit murder. She told Spinelli that she and David had just watched a true crime show in which the woman had murdered her 2 husbands with antifreeze by putting it in their jello. Spinelli was very suspicious of Castor at this point. When he found out that Castor's first husband also died by suspicious circumstances, they decided to look back into Mike Wallace's medical records. And they found that Mike had had no signs or diagnoses of heart issues before he had died. After the autopsy was concluded on David, Castor did something really weird and really creepy. When Mike Wallace, her first husband, had died, she had him buried in the cemetery in Onondaga County, and the tombstone that she had placed on Mike's grave also had her name on it. When David passed away, she buried David right next to Mike's grave in the cemetery. And the way she had them lined up was that when she died, she would be buried right in between her 2 husbands. On Mike Wallace's tombstone, she had the phrase, "Together forever," and their names were in 2 hearts on the stone. And on David's stone, she had the phrase, "Husband of Stacey R." engraved. That's really fucking weird. I cannot imagine how the families of these 2 men felt every time they went to the cemetery to see their loved ones and saw that layout. David Jr. stated that the whole thing felt like he was in a really bad movie and that he was playing a major part and he didn't want to be in it but couldn't get out. Once the police had seen the medical records of Mike Wallace, they went to the court and received permission to exhume Mike's body. They wanted to see if there was any possible connection between Mike and David's death. Detective Spinelli stated in the interview that the doctor who would be conducting the autopsy on Mike's body told him that if there had been poison in Mike's system when he died, that there would still be evidence of it. You're probably wondering how that would be possible, aren't you? Well, let me tell you how. When ethylene glycol is ingested in fatal amounts, it causes the body to create crystals that will affect the kidneys. Those crystals will remain intact and clearly visible for years after death. And wouldn't you know it, when the doctors examined Mike's body, they found those exact crystals inside all of Mike Wallace's major organs. Can you say gotcha, bitch? Prosecutors and police were preparing to arrest Stacey Castor for the murder of her 2 husbands. But before they could do that, Stacey made another frantic call to 911. Castor told the 911 operator that she believed her daughter Ashley had taken some pills. On the call, Castor states that Ashley, her oldest daughter, was conscious and moaning. When the paramedics arrived, they found Ashley very close to death, and next to her was a suicide note and an empty bottle of sleeping pills and an empty 26er of vodka. For those of you outside of Canada, a 26er is what we call a 750 milliliter bottle. So not so small a bottle of vodka. Drinking a full 26er like that would be enough to give a person serious alcohol poisoning. And then you add in the full bottle of sleeping pills, it would be lights out. Luckily for Ashley, her younger sister Bree had come into her room in the morning to get her up for school and found her unconscious. Bree made her mother call 911. When I read that, I almost threw up. I'm sorry. Your younger daughter tells you that your older daughter is unconscious and there's a bottle of vodka and sleeping pills beside the bed and she has to make you call 911? Stacey Castor, you are one of the worst mothers I have ever heard of in my life. You piece of shit. We're going to look at the suicide note. And remember, Ashley is Mike Wallace's daughter, and she would have been around 11 or 12 at the time that he died. There are several spelling mistakes throughout this note, so I'm going to read the words as they are written with the spelling mistakes in them because that's important. It starts out, Mummy. When you read the letter, just remember, I love you, and everything I did is because I love you. I'm sorry all of this is happening to you, but now everyone is going to know what really happened, and they know it wasn't you, it was me. None, I think she meant no one, was ever supposed to know about Daddy. I told you when Daddy died it was all my fault, and it was Daddy was doing things you never knew about. He was drinking when he was at Pick and Pull house and at Lisa's house. He was smoking pot again. Too, I saw him. He was mean to you and me, and he only ever loved Bree. I couldn't let him do those things to you anymore. You think I don't remember how things were, but I do, and I didn't want to ever live like that anymore. It wasn't fair to you or me. Daddy wasn't going to be good to you or be ever only Bree. I couldn't stand it anymore. The cops said there was antifreeze in Daddy's body, but did they tell anyone about the rat poison, Poson, too? When I got home from school that day, I knew what was going on. Daddy was barely breathing. I knew he was going to die. That's why I didn't call you for help or anyone else. I wanted to make sure he couldn't be mean to you or me anymore. He died before I went to pick Bree up from school. I watched him, and I knew he couldn't hurt you anymore. Then we were happy for a while, just the three of us. And then you married David, and he was mean to you too. He was mean to all of us, meaner than Daddy. And I knew you loved him like you loved Daddy, and you were going to let him treat, Treet, you like he did. And you wouldn't leave. It wasn't fair, Mummy. He didn't love you or me or Bree. I never thought anyone would miss David, Daved, none, but you loved him. It was harder than with Daddy because you were always home or with him, but it did it. I made sure he would never hurt you anymore. To that Friday when David came home so you would go to the post office is when I first did it. It was easy. I asked him if he wanted something to drink, and I put the antifreeze in his glass with some soda. He drank 2 whole, Hole, glasses. That was it, only it took longer for David than with Daddy. Once I put the antifreeze in Daddy's Gatorade, it only took a day or so, and that's when he died. When you were sleeping on the couch after David Locke, Locke, himself in the room. I got the extra key because I knew where he hid it, and I put stuff in the room. I tried to get him to drink some of that booze with the dropper thing, but he was gout, Gout, of it and wouldn't. I poured the antifreeze in the glass and on the floor and left the bottle in the room. And then I put the gloves back in the kitchen and got ready for walk, W-O-K. You never knew, and know, K-N-O-W. All of these cops are saying all of this stuff about you to everyone you know and love. Mummy, it's just not fair. When you told me they dug Daddy up, I knew what was going to happen. None was ever supposed to know, Mummy, and now they do. And they think you did it, but you didn't. It was me. When the cops came to my school today, I thought they had figured it out and I was going to go to jail. But they didn't take me, Mummy. I can't live like this and watch, WHATCH, what they are doing to you, not anymore, but I can't go to jail for the rest of my life. I can't put you through that. I did the only thing I could to help you, Mummy. I know you hate me for doing what I did, but Mummy, remember, I love you more than anything, and I did it for you and for us. Please forgive me. Mummy, someday when all of this is over, please forgive me. Make sure you take care of Bree. She is all you have left now. Remember how happy we all were together, and you will be happy again. I promise you, Mummy. Tell Matt I love him, and I'm sorry. Tell Bree to be a good girl for you, and I love her now. 2. Please don't hate me. Remember, I love you. Ashley. There's also no punctuation throughout that entire letter. Not one comma, period, apostrophe, nothing. Thankfully, Ashley survived. The doctors said she was within 10 minutes of death, and if Bree hadn't come into her room that morning, Ashley would have died. Ashley stated in an interview that she woke up in the hospital and had no idea what day it was or where she was. She stated that one of the detectives kept asking her what was in the note that she wrote. Ashley said she could only respond with, "What letter? What pills are you talking about?" Ashley told the detectives that all she remembered was having a drink with her mom and then waking up in the hospital. David Jr. stated that he honestly didn't know what to believe at this point. Was it his stepsister? Was it Stacey? He was so confused and sad. In the interview, I felt so bad for David Jr. Prosecutors felt that whoever had typed that suicide note was the killer of both Mike and David, but they needed to find out if it was Stacey Castor or Ashley. The police confiscated and sent the family computer to a forensic expert to examine. The suicide note had been created in Word. And I'm going to try and explain what the computer expert found out, but I went to school for criminology, not computer. So don't come for me if I say something wrong here. I am only the best I can be. When you're typing a Word document, the program saves the document even if you don't. It keeps copies of the document in the background of the computer. And it does this autosave over and over again at what appeared to me to be pretty regular intervals, every couple of minutes or so. It could be so often as even every minute. I'm not sure what the intervals are. But at the time, there was only one person in the family who used the program Word, and that was Stacey Castor. And remember, this is 2005. Most households only had one computer. There were flip phones, but there weren't pocket computers like there are now. Really, Word was just starting to be used in mainstream. So it's not that unusual that there's only one computer and that everybody had their own accounts to use on that computer. Ashley's account on the family computer had never used the program Word. Also, the experts found several different drafts of the suicide note that had not been saved to the computer. And the person who wrote the note kept using the term antifree, the same mispronunciation that Stacey Castor had used in the interview with Detective Spinelli. Spinelli stated that it hit him like a ton of bricks. He said it was like, "Oh my God, antifree, antifree." It was exactly what she had said to him in the interview. Spinelli stated, "That wasn't a suicide note, it was a confession." But using the wrong word isn't enough evidence to convict Stacey Castor. But perhaps the most damning evidence regarding the suicide note was that the bits of the note that were still on the computer's hard drive were time-stamped. The computer experts determined that Word was not used after 2:27 p.m. on the day of Ashley's supposed suicide attempt. The letter had been typed while Ashley was in school. She couldn't have written that note. The only one at home at the time of the writing of Ashley's suicide note was Stacey Castor. The police arrested Stacey Castor for the murder of David Castor and the attempted murder of Ashley. During the trial, Castor maintained her innocence and insisted that it was in fact Ashley who had killed both of her husbands. Watching this piece of shit testify in the courtroom made my stomach boil. She was so nonchalant about the fact that she was saying her daughter had killed her husband's. She didn't even shed a tear. This woman is cold. The prosecutor was questioning Stacey at one point, and he said to her, "You referred to Ashley in a negative way, correct?" Castor replied, "I'm sure I did." "Because she killed your two husbands, didn't she?" "Yes, she did. I can't give you a reason why she did it." Oh my God. While she's saying these things, the camera panned over to Ashley and Bree sitting in the gallery of the courtroom, and poor little Ashley just had tears streaming down her face, listening to her own mother say these horrible things about her. But why would Stacey Castor kill both her husbands and then try and pin it on her daughter? What's her motive? Well, ask yourself, what is the motive in many, many cases? Money. Couple that with a narcissistic psychopath, and getting people out of the way and framing your daughter for the killings isn't such a big deal. This woman is absolute garbage. When Mike Wallace died, Castor received a $50,000 life insurance payout. But when David Castor died, Stacey Castor received somewhere in the range of $200,000. The prosecutors stated in court that they believed that since Castor had gotten away with Mike Wallace's murder, she decided to do it again. They told the court that they believed that on Friday night she put antifreeze into one of David's drinks, thinking that he would die during the night. But when she checked on him in the morning, he was still alive, unconscious, but breathing. So she tried to get him to drink more antifreeze from a glass. But because David was unconscious, he couldn't drink from a glass. So she went and got a turkey baster and forced the antifreeze down his throat. That's why only her fingerprints were on the glass and David's DNA was on the tip of the turkey baster. Then, when Stacey Castor realized that she was going to be charged with the murders of both Mike and David, she decided that she would frame Ashley for the murders. She wrote the suicide note during the day when Ashley was at school. Then, when Ashley got home, she invited Ashley to have a girls' night with her, watching TV and having some drinks. She mixed sleeping pills and other types of drugs into Ashley's drink and then put her daughter to bed and left her to die through the night. Ashley stated that she thought it was really weird how drunk she felt just from the one drink that her mom had made for her. Ashley said that after drinking that one drink, she felt like she was going to pass out. The trial lasted for 4 weeks. An emotional Ashley told the judge that she hated her mother for ruining so many people's lives, but she still loved her for the bond that she originally had with her. Just how torn this girl is just rips my heart apart. Ashley stated in her victim impact statement, "I never knew what hate was until now. Even though I do hate her, I still love her at the same time. That bothers me. It is so confusing. How can you hate someone and love them at the same time? I just wish that she would say sorry for everything she did, including all the lies. As horrible as it makes me feel, this is goodbye, Mom. As hard as you tried, I survived, and I will survive because now I'm surrounded by people that love me. I'm going to do good things in this world, despite making me, in every sense of the word, an orphan." Oh, this poor angel. I wish I could give her a hug. Ashley, I'm giving you a hug right now. Oh, that just my heart. Thankfully, the jury believed the scientific evidence and found Castor guilty of the murder of David Castor and the attempted murder of Ashley. She was sentenced to a minimum of 50 years before she could apply for parole. When the judge was handing down the verdict, he stated, "You're not just a danger to the general public, you're a danger to the people who love you and are closest to you." The prosecutors decided not to pursue charging Castor with the murder of Mike Wallace because she was already serving a 50-year prison term, and they didn't think it was necessary. Plus, If there was ever, by any remote iota of a chance, that Castor got a successful appeal, they would have that murder charge in their back pocket to use against her. In 2010, Castor put an appeal in for a new trial. The argument was that Detective Spinelli should not have conducted the interview with Castor when David Castor died, because at the time she had a lawyer and they should have allowed her to contact that lawyer. But the judge dismissed the appeal and kept Castor's sentence and conviction. In 2011, David Jr. and his biological mother, Janice Poissant, sued Castor and two friends of hers, Paul and Lynn Pulaski, for the remainder of David Castor's estate. According to court documents, Castor brought a will that was supposed to be David's will to the Pulaskis after David had died and persuaded them to sign it as witnesses. In that will, Castor made sure that she was the one to receive everything and that nothing would go to any of the children or any of David's family members. The Pulaskis knew what they were doing and they signed that will. The Pulaskis made a deal when they were approached by prosecutors for immunity in return for their testimony against Stacey Castor. The judge awarded David Jr. the remaining $110,000 in the estate and an extra $250,000 in punitive damages. What pieces of shit! That couple, the Pulaskis, they are almost as bad as Stacey Castor. If any friend came to me and asked me to sign a will for their husband or their partner after that person had died, I would be so suspicious. I may love you to death as a friend, but I'm turning your ass in. So you've all been warned. In 2016, David Jr. petitioned the Supreme Court to have his father's body moved from the cemetery plot that would have him laying next to the plot of Mike Wallace and Stacey Castor. Stacey Castor owned both plots and, like I said, had planned to have herself buried in between the two men. Castor Jr. told the court that the pain was so unbearable that he hasn't visited his father's grave in many years. Quote, "All I feel there at Owasco Rural Cemetery is brutal pain, including visions and flashbacks. There is no peace and never will be any healing process if my father is not moved from Stacey's shrine of evil. My quest, Your Honor, is to also make sure that Stacey is removed from ownership and unable to be placed at her time of death anywhere or in the vicinity of Michael Wallace and Rosemary Wallace Corbett. I'm giving this quest because I know that unless this is done, the Corbetts too will be unable to start their healing process, and they too will keep living with a dire need." This young man. Ugh. On June 11th, 2016, Stacey Castor was found dead inside her prison cell. After the autopsy was conducted, it was determined that she had died of a heart attack. 4 days later, on June 15th, 2016, a judge granted the request of David Jr. to be allowed to move his father's body to another cemetery. David Jr. was able to accomplish his goal. Unfortunately, as far as I could find, Mike Wallace is still buried in the plot that Stacey Castor had bought for both of them, and she is buried beside him. One thing I am certain of is that Mike is not resting in peace. My thoughts. This was a disgusting case. This woman, I don't comprehend how you could bring a beautiful, innocent child into this world and then find enough hate to, number one, take their father away from them, and number two, try and kill them and blame them for murdering their father. This woman is a horrible, horrible piece of... I don't even think there's a word in the English language to describe this woman. She's not even a woman. She's just a piece of scum. But let's look at this. The first red flag I saw was that when Stacey Castor was 17, she fell for a 24-year-old man. That's not love. That's infatuation, and most likely unhealthy infatuation. I am not in any way trying to blame Stacey Castor's parents, but where were they? Why were they not trying to put a stop to this? That's a 6-year age gap. That at 17 is a huge gap. I don't want to speak ill of Mike because he's a victim in this case, but what the fuck were you thinking? Hooking up with a 17-year-old child? That is just asking for trouble with a capital T. Another giant red flag for Stacey Castor. She tried to counteract the favoritism shown to Bree by Mike by becoming best friends with Ashley. That entire statement makes me want to slap the shit out of her. To me, it sounds like she was a little jelly of the attention that Bree was getting from Mike. I don't think her acting like Ashley's BFF had anything to do with her feeling bad for Ashley. A normal human, a normal parent, would have addressed the issue with the other parent, not just tried to make best friends with the other daughter. That makes no sense to me. Another red flag. If you approach a spouse, like your in-law, and tell them that you want an autopsy on your brother's body, and they say, no, we should trust the doctors, you need to call the police immediately and have them look into that death. I feel like autopsies should be like jackets. If you think you need one, you probably do. And the never second guessing a doctor, well, let's just say if something looks like a fish and acts like a fish, it's probably not a horse. Always ask questions. If something doesn't feel right to you, ask. In an article by Milia and Noonan in 2022, they determined that the majority of women who committed filicide regretted the act and regretted not seeking help from family or healthcare professionals. The women that they studied in their article who had committed filicide, which is the killing of one's own child, mostly had complex circumstances characterized by poverty, abusive relationships, and poor and family social supports and mental health issues. But that was not the case with Stacey Castor. She is a perfect example of a narcissistic psychopath. Let's check the boxes for Stacey Castor as a narcissistic psychopath. They are often destructive to the people around them. They usually are unable to feel empathy or guilt, and they have no problem manipulating others for their gain. They are glib and superficially charming and have a giant sense of entitlement. Check, 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 check. If Stacey Castor was just a little bit more intelligent, she might have gotten away with all of her crimes. Luckily, she was an absolute stupid asshat. Stacey Castor showed no remorse for anything that she did to those who she was supposed to love the most in the world. And for that, karma will come and get you, bitch. That was a horrific, horrible case. My heart goes out to Ashley and Bree and David Jr., who are left now with their family in tatters. If you enjoy the show, please head over to our Patreon page. $3 a month, you can sign up and get exclusive content to the Bitter Bits, smaller episodes. You can also subscribe on Spotify and get the same exclusive access. I hope you have a good week. Enjoy your day today. This has been a Bitter Witness production.